This is Martin Giles of the Guildford Dragon News, and I'm with the leader of Guildford Borough Council, Joss Bigmore. Joss, thank you for giving your time for this interview.
No problem, Martin. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Now, last night at the council, it was decided that you should accept legal advice that it's not a good idea to review the local plan for the time being, and perhaps not until the statutory review in a couple of years' time.
Yes, that's correct. That was the decision of the full council last night.
So in light of that decision, what do you think those that voted for you in 2019, expecting the review to take place as soon as possible, which I think you wanted at that time, do you think they have the right to feel let down?
I think the history of R4GV policy towards the local plan, our election manifestos were based on an assumption that the plan wouldn't be adopted before we were elected. Post-adoption, we were in a world that we hadn't expected, because obviously the plan was adopted very close to the election. And we've had to look in great detail about what we can actually do now, and the risks, the potential outcomes, and the potential pitfalls of a formal review of the local plan. It's taken a while, too long to get to this stage, in my opinion. We've got advice internally, we've now had external advice, and every councillor last night made the decision that they thought was best for the borough. And obviously that is going to disappoint some people, but I genuinely believe in my vote, which was for the recommendations last night, that under the current scenario and with the current uncertainty, the most prudent action for Guildford Borough as a whole is to not formally review the local plan as soon as possible. Okay,
now your colleagues on the executive, your R4 colleagues, Tim Anderson and John Redpath, they didn't agree with that view, did they? And the fact is that your party's split on this, isn't it?
Absolutely, and I don't see why anyone should be surprised about that. We have councillors that represent villages that have been changed in front of people's eyes as a consequence of the local plan. And we have councillors in other areas that are less affected. Every single person in this borough will have a different view about what is an acceptable risk to take with a review of the local plan, because there is a risk, Martin, that we may need to actually take more land out of the green belt if our housing targets go up. That is a risk. Now, R4GV, Councillor Anderson has been very clear about his position for the past 3 months when as we've been discussing this, that for him, it was essential to do a formal review immediately, just for the chance of being able to do something to help our villages. Other members of the group, including myself, were of the opinion that that chance was so small, it was not worth the potential harm that could come from an ill-judged review. Councillor Redpath agreed with Councillor Anderson, as did Councillor Cross. Coming from Lovelace is not a surprise. I mean, R4GV is probably the broadest coalition of individuals of all political groups. We don't have a whip. Everyone is entitled to their independent view, which we respect each other's view to disagree. For some, it may seem unusual that, the 4 R4GV members of the executive disagree, but that's politics and we deal with it. I mean, we're all adults and we respect each other's opinions.
Okay. Now, is there any point in local authorities being charged with administering planning within their boroughs and districts? You're just government puppets, aren't you? You're just following orders.
I think that it is very difficult, or Guildford Borough is not an island where we can set every single policy ourselves. And there is a national framework above, and there are nationally set targets for housing. That basically feel down from a conservative pledge to deliver 300,000 homes a year that they've never done. That's the world we're in. However, there is an enormous amount we can do at a local level. It's just that it's very difficult to do it overnight. The work that we're doing now in the town centre with the town centre master plan to release brownfield land should have been done 15 years ago, and it was ignored. That meant that when it came to delivering a local plan, none of the flooding work had been done, none of the work on flexible use of land, brownfield land had been done. So those sites were not available. And funnily enough, it went to the Greenbelt. So that was just inattention on behalf of the administrations that came before us. You know, we are incredibly energetic delivering that town centre master plan and the flood alleviation strategy to try and unlock those brownfield sites in the town that should have been unlocked years ago. And that's something the Borough Council can do, and we are doing.
But the fact is that the government plays the tune, doesn't it? And you have to dance.
Well, the National Planning Policy Framework at national level is the senior document, and you cannot contradict that at a local level.
So local people's views count for little, do they? I mean, all those views that were gathered in the consultation, they counted for very little, didn't they?
I mean, I wasn't party to the 2019.
No, but you know what happened.
Yeah, I think those views were listened to, but in the constraints of the national policy, there was very little they could do to accommodate them, because of the failures of the policies of the previous administrations giving them options in the local plan. And
yeah, if I was a waiter and I came to you and said, "What soup would you like?" and you said mulligatawny, and I said, "We've only got tomato," you wouldn't think it was much of a menu, would you?
I wouldn't, but I would blame the kitchen for not doing the prep work in the previous years to have better ingredients and better choices.
Fair enough. And who's the kitchen here?
Pardon?
Who's the kitchen?
The kitchen is us.
The local authority or the government?
Well, no, I mean, the government may provide the building, but I think the borough has to provide the ingredients, and if both are working properly, you can have a full choice of menu. If one of them is not working properly, you've got Hobson's choice, haven't you?
Okay, so where do you think the main responsibility lies for the situation in Guildford on planning? On planning,
where do I think? I think that the government needs to be very clear that in my opinion, its primary intention is to deliver homes. Where they go, the quality, the sustainability is very much secondary. And all the talk of you don't have to build on Greenbelt is absolute nonsense, because, you know, everywhere that Tandridge, Mole Valley that are trying to develop local plans at the moment are having to go into Greenbelt. So there is a disconnect with the words coming out of MPs' mouths and the actual policy that currently is in place at a national level. And I think there needs to be a degree of consistency / honesty in what they actually want.
But Mole Valley Council was mentioned last night specifically because they're trying to go with a lower housing number. Why can't Guildford be in the vanguard alongside them?
We could, but council last night decided it wasn't worth the risk. I mean, we will look that whether Mole Valley are successful or not in challenging the standard method of housing will be a key driver in the kind of equation about risk reward, about what we should do with the formal review. If they come up with an argument that we can use to challenge the standard method, we will use it immediately. We will be very nimble, but that is an enormous risk.
Right. So in the light of all this and of the government planning policy that still exists, are you optimistic about Guildford Borough retaining its character?
Well, I mean, the villages have lost their character already. I mean, that's clear. The development management documents that are going through, policy documents that hopefully are going to be adopted this time next year, will help in a way. Supplementary planning guidance, neighbourhood plans, character studies, all these things can help. But at the end of the day, you know, if the government wants boroughs to deliver a certain amount of housing every year, obviously it is going to change the character. It is the job of the Borough Council to ensure our design, our conservation, our sustainability policies are as sympathetic and protective of the character we want to keep, and also transforming the characters we don't like to something we do like, because there's a positive aspect to this as well. You know, that's the job of the borough.
Okay.
But you know, but you cannot get away from the fact that we are mandated to deliver housing by government, and housing will change character, sometimes not in a good way.
And I know that you've met with your party executive colleagues since the meeting. Can you outline what way forward? Is it just what you said just now, or are there things you feel new things you've agreed with them that is a way forward?
So the the things we're focused on planning policy now, development management policies. We've had the Reg 19 responses. We're looking to submit that to the planning inspectorate for
the Reg 19
later
responses, that's public responses.
Yeah. And for public and also developers that that think our policies are too stringent, everything like that. So we're now looking at that, and there's meetings starting Monday with the local plan panel to go through all those responses. The Greenbelt SPD, supplementary planning guidance for Greenbelt, which should help some of our villages. Then the other aspect is local for the formal review of the local plan. What is the fastest we can do it? So if one of these external factors, national planning policy, Mole Valley decision, Tandridge decision, precedent somewhere else that we can use, how quickly can we get to a formal review stage? So what is the minimum evidence we need to update to enable us to make that informed decision? Because a formal review has to be evidence-based. At the moment, we have some pretty strong hypotheses, and I'm pretty sure the evidence will back them out. You cannot go into these examinations and these public where you're basically going up against a development lobby that wants to develop everywhere if you haven't got sound evidence. So we are already, the transport evidence base is being reviewed, and we're about to set the scope and procure new evidence bases for a retail study in the town to find out how much retail we need, the employment uses we need, and the leisure uses we need. So that is 4 evidence bases that we are updating or starting the process to update as we speak, such that if any of these factors change, we can formal review as quickly as possible.
Okay, thank you. Now, as I've got you, can I just ask you one question on another subject? There were 2 motions last night on matters that the Borough Council doesn't have a lot of control over. I mean, we've been questioning whether they have a lot of control over planning, but they were on areas of whether the police commissioner should have been criticised by a subcommittee at Surrey County Council, and the GBC agenda or policy on sexuality and transgender. Do you think that was appropriate, those debates, for the Borough Council?
I mean, every council has the right to bring a motion if you can find a seconder. And the arbiters of whether they're appropriate for the chamber are ultimately the chairman of the meeting, which is the mayor, who was comfortable under advice from the monitoring officer and democratic services, and then the council chamber itself. And you saw that both those motions were defeated because I think the majority view was really, this is not the place. Certainly, Councillor Potter's motion, the sentiment behind that motion, everyone was 100% behind, and you couldn't be against. It's just, it was felt the wording of the motion overreached the powers of the council, and I think we'll work with George to work out what we can actually deliver on that theme that will make a difference. I think the council becoming white ribbon accredited, we should do, irrespective of a motion being lost. That's a good thing to do, and a good and a concrete thing that we can do to kind of promote the behaviors we want in organizations that we deal with. So I think, I did, that motion came around at the beginning of December, and we kind of were discussing a lot with the Lib Dems that our group had issues with it because we felt it overreached the council, but we will take the positive things out of it and come back, and implement what we can within council. Yeah,
I mean, obviously they're sensitive subjects, but
yes, they're incredibly sensitive, and it's, and I really do, the whole transgender debate is incredibly toxic, I think, with people from both sides. The standard of debate is really bad, but it's, I think a debate needs to be had. It's very important. People that, transgender are some of the most vulnerable people in society, and they deserve to have equal rights. Yeah. As do women, as do men, and those rights need to be equal and not impinge on each other's, and that debate needs to happen. The whole sporting thing, but I don't have the answers, and I'm not clear enough in my own thinking or educated enough about the issue to really opine. But I do think it's brave for both sides to express opinion, given the reaction both sides get, and I think that's a shame. But I think the council chamber last night was probably the wrong place to have that debate. It was, some of the comments were a little bit uncomfortable, to be honest, Martin.
Okay, well, thank you for explaining all that, and thank you once again for your time.
Thank you very much, Martin.